to introduce my speaker, Mike Camphouse, the president and CEO of Perrone Produce. In 2014, URM recruited Mike Camphouse to take over Perrone Produce company as their president and CEO. With almost 40 years of grocery and produce experience in both the retail and wholesale segments, Mike has played a significant senior executive role with a number of high-profile companies. Notably, Mike spent 28 years with SuperValu, the majority of that time as a senior level in both business development and fresh produce side of the business. Prior to his current role as CEO and president of Perrone Produce, he was running a subsidiary of SuperValu called W. Newell Company in Champaign, Illinois, a high-volume independent specialty produce company dedicated exclusively to fresh produce. As a seasoned professional, Mike has helped lead Perrone into a new era of growth. Over the past 8 years, Perrone has more than doubled its annual gross revenues. Mike's business approach is anchored by a customer-centric attitude with an ardent belief that an organization can only be successful by truly listening to the needs of its customers. Mike and his wife, Linda, have 2 grown sons, Christopher and Brad. Although Boston is where they grew up and will always be home, yes, that makes him a Patriots fan, nice. They have fallen completely in love with the Inland Northwest. Please give a warm welcome to Mike.
Thank you, Julie. If I didn't know better, you'd think I wrote that. Actually, I did. Look, it is an honor to be asked to come here today. You know, I work in the wholesale segment, and we don't have faced with consumers, right? We have faced with other businesses, and we don't get the opportunity to talk about our organization very much, so it is an honor to come here today and share with you a bit about our organization. I've been told numerous times I need to keep this under 20 minutes. For a guy from Boston, that's a bit of a challenge, but I'm up for the challenge, and I know you'll keep me on track if I get out of line, right? Okay, good. So this morning, to kind of organize how I wanted to present our company to you, we kind of broke it down into 5 little bite-sized pieces, if you will. I first want to start by giving you a bit of an overview on the company history and a little bit about our core business model. From there, I want to share what I think is one of the bigger differentiators of our company, a little bit about the facility we operate in, and that'll make a little more sense when I get to it in a few minutes. After that, I want to give you some key statistics around the company. I'm pretty sure you'll be surprised by some of the things I'm going to share with you. And from there, I'm going to talk about the biggest item we sell, and you're going to leave this room knowing more than you ever wanted to know about bananas. But it's a pretty interesting story for those of you who have heard it in the past. And then I'm going to finish up sharing with you an initiative we undertook 2 years ago to elevate the status of growers in the Northwest. You know, and this is all about connecting the consumer to the grower. We've invested heavily in that, and I'd like to share with you what that initiative looks like. So as a final call out, excuse me, I've got a little ahead of myself here. So here's some of the key historical highlights of the organization. This year will mark the 78th year of continuous operation of the Perrone Produce Company here in Spokane. The company was founded by Joe Perrone back in 1945 at the end of World War II, probably not a mile from here in what is now Kendall Yards. That's where the company got its foundings. Subsequently, it moved down to what is now known as the University District, where it spent most of its life, and eventually ended up in the West Plains, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. One of the biggest milestones in the company occurred in 1986, when an organization here in town called URM, does everybody know who URM is? It's a cooperative, it's a very big company, it's $1 billion company right here in Spokane. It's a cooperative, it's owned by its customers, and its sole purpose for existence is to supply products, services, and programs that independent grocers need to compete today. So in 1986, they weren't selling fresh produce, and it was a need their customers had, so they acquired Perrone Produce. Since its acquisition in 1986, Perrone has operated as a completely autonomous corporation owned by URM. And when I say autonomous, it runs independently of its parent company. It has its own board of directors, but make no mistake, it's owned by URM, and we're here to service the members. The next big milestone in the company is somewhere around 2007, 2008. My predecessor, Pat Davidson, had determined that their facility, again, which was down in the University District, had outlived its useful purpose. And they drew up plans to build really a fantastic facility, which they placed in the West Plains and moved into in 2010. And I'll share a little bit more about that with you in a few minutes. The final call out, if I were just to single a couple things out that I'd make about milestones in the company, is back in 2014, new executive leadership, me, came in. As Julie mentioned, I was recruited to come in and take over the organization, and it was really had reached a point where we had to repackage the company, move it in a different direction to meet the needs of the members, and that's exactly what we've done for the last 8 years. So I'll share some of that information with you in just a couple minutes here. Okay, our core business model. As I've mentioned, we're wholly owned by a cooperative that services independent grocers. Our business model is straightforward. We exist to supply independent grocers with all the fresh produce and floral products they need to be competitive in this marketplace. Our marketing territory is 4 states. We cover Washington State up to the Cascades. We go down into Oregon, not way into Oregon. We're in the Idaho Panhandle and Point South. And oddly enough, we have a huge presence in western Montana. In fact, it's one of our fastest growing markets. All in, that encompasses 166 supermarkets that we service anywhere between 3 and 6 times a week. That's a whole lot of trucks on the road, and that's a whole lot of produce. Our core customers, as I've mentioned, is the independent grocer. There's 5 groups that make up well over 95% of our volume. And those groups of stores are Rosars, who I'm sure you're all aware of, Yoke's Fresh Markets, Super One Foods, both here in Spokane, in Montana, and in Idaho. We service all of those. And then there's 2 collective groups. One is known as Harvest Foods, and that's a collective of independent grocers, and Family Foods, and that's another collective of independent grocers. So again, all in, that's 166 stores, and that makes up 95% of our volume. Our annual revenue is $140 million a year, and that's a whole lot of apples and oranges that flow through little old Spokane here. I would share with you, and Julie mentioned this already, our business model is pretty healthy right now. We have doubled the size of the company, and when you think about that, right, this is a mature market, in a mature industry, in a mature town, and to be able to do that in 7 years, that's something we're really, really proud of, right? And it's something we think is a testimony that maybe we've moved the organization in the right direction. We didn't do that by bringing on more customers. We did that by doing a better job for the customers we had and by helping them sell more product. Does that make sense? Right? Oh, lost my little clicker there. Okay, here's a look at our current building, which is on Hallett Road out in the West Plains. If you don't know where that is, I guarantee you've driven by it 100 times. So if you're heading east on I-90, everybody know where Caterpillar is? You can see it on the south side of I-90. We're right adjacent to Caterpillar. We're a good wedge and a 9-iron from the Amazon facility. We're directly across the highway from the Amazon facility. And again, we moved in there in 2010. And that kind of leads me to what I want to talk a little bit about our facility, because I really do believe it's one of the more differentiating aspects of our company. Let me add a little context to that statement. Most like companies to what Perrone does exist in reuse buildings or re-engineered buildings. And to be super clear, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the norm in the industry. This is a low-margin industry, and expense control is super, super important. So most like companies to Perrone exist in reuse buildings. We have the distinct advantage, and it really is an advantage, to have a building that was engineered from the ground up to do exactly what we do. It's almost a perfect environment to buy produce, store produce, ship produce to independent grocers. It really helps us, and this is our biggest mission, right, is to maintain freshness, and we can do that really well because of the facility we're in. Let me make some call-outs about that. So first and foremost, we have, and I'm going to use some technical terms, but I'll explain it, I promise. We have 100% chill chain integrity. And what that simply means is from the minute that peach shows up at Perone Produce to the minute it goes to that Rosar store, it has never left a temperature-controlled environment, not once. So we have 100% chill chain integrity. To maintain, the optimum environment, if you can see that graph over here on the right, we have 8 different coolers in that facility. It's about 120,000 square foot of refrigerated space. But we have 8 different coolers, capable of different temperatures and different humidity levels. And the whole idea behind that is you want to store this product, I got to stop doing that. We want to store this product in the best environment we can to maintain optimum freshness, right? And that's what a building engineer from the ground up gives us. In support of that, I like to think we go to kind of extremes, right? We even have what's called air scrubbers in the building, and let me explain that. As produce ripens, it gives off a gas called ethylene. It's a harmless gas to human beings, but the issue with ethylene in a facility like ours is the more you have it, the faster the product ripens. The faster the product ripens, the more ethylene it gives off. So you can understand how in a building like ours, where we have almost $2 million of produce, if you don't get that ethylene out of the atmosphere in there, it's going to be detrimental to the shelf life of that product. So we go the extra extreme and we put air scrubbers in the building. We maintain well over $1 million of banana rooms. These are 9 massive rooms. Each one of them holds 45,000 pounds of bananas, and they exist for one purpose, and that's to take a dead green banana and turn it into something you'll buy next time you walk into Yokes. It's a big commitment, it's a big part of our business, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. Don't know if anybody's familiar with the term FSMA. It's relatively new legislation. It stands for the Food Safety Modernization Act. We put a lot of energy behind this, and we are 100% compliant with FSMA legislation, and it's evolving legislation, and we're committed to staying ahead of that. Food safety shouldn't be a debate, right? It shouldn't be something we think about when we go to bed at night. It's something we invest in, and it's something we don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about because we do invest in it. And that brings me to, one of the other, I think, differentiators we have, or at least important aspects we have in the facility, is we have some very robust systems that helps us track product. And I'll walk you through an example. John Douglas, whose picture's over here, is a farmer down in Pasco. His nectarines show up in our facility. Before they get in, we record the farm lot on every one of those cases, and it goes into our system. Then it goes into our coolers, and then ultimately we ship it to our customers. How many recalls have you all heard about just in the last 6 months? Last week we heard about lettuce being recalled at Arby's, right? Well, 20 years ago when that happened, you'd have to do these broad recalls of everything you shipped for the last 10 days, right? Today, because of these robust systems we have and this recording that we do, when we get a recall, we know exactly to the case how many may be in our facility, and we know exactly if we shipped them out where they went. So that enables us to surgically and quickly remove any kind of recalled product from the marketplace. So we call that one up, one down traceability. We think it's an important part of the food safety protocols we have in the facility. Might sound like I'm bragging a little bit, but I really do think that we have a best-in-class operation up there. So let me move on to some key statistics about the organization. At any given time, we have over 1,200 items in that facility. And who knew there was 1,200 items to go in a produce or a floral department? But there is, right? When you look at just an item like an apple, there's 21 different varieties and 4 different sizes. You start doing the math on that on everything we carry, and you can quickly understand, how you can have 1,200 different items in that building. If you add in seasonality, by the end of the year, we'll have had over 2,200 items in that building. So it's a very vast SKU assortment that we make available to our customers. Our average value of our inventory is a little bit over $1.7 million, and that's a whole lot of apples and oranges, right? And in the summertime, which, by the way, is our busiest time of the year, between Memorial Day and Labor Day, it's when we do most of our volume, disproportionate volume, our inventory levels in that little old building will exceed $2 million at any given time. Maybe one of the most important metrics we keep a really close eye on is what we call warehouse turns. It's a direct measurement of freshness, right? How quick did you get it in? How quick did you get it out? Right now, on an annualized basis, we're turning our inventory 1.8 times a week. 1.8 times a week. I mean, that's $2 million of produce flipping through that place multiple times a week. And during the summer, it even moves faster than that. Our number one item we sell out of the building, as silly as it is bananas. We sell 250,000 pounds a week or 18 million pounds a year. Little old Spokane, Washington, right? Who thought you could sell that many bananas? You might be surprised, though, to know the kind of distances we go to bring product, into this marketplace. And I want to share a little bit of that with you. I'm not going to go into great detail on this, but I think this is kind of enlightening, right? So what I'm showing you here is on an annual basis, in the United States, on a regular basis, we procure fresh produce from 15 different states. We'll go all the way to the East Coast, and we did this summer for corn, right? We'll go all the way down to the Mexican border, all the way up to the Canadian border. So there's about 15 states. Now, the vast majority of it comes from Southern California this time of the year with what's not grown in the Northwest. But, we buy from quite a few states on an annual basis. But then there's this whole global network that we're in now. And last year, and this surprised me, and I've been in the business a long time, when we looked it up, we bought from over 20 different countries last year, right? And you think, well, how is that possible? Well, if it's January and you want a navel orange, you got to go to New Zealand for it or South Africa for it, right? There's lots of these opportunities where we have to go and get this product imported from other countries. Probably our biggest challenge as a company, if you think about what it is we sell, right, and we're trying to turn it almost 2 times a week, is forecasting the demand. Anybody been in here in a snowstorm when people assault the stores? Well, you can't forecast that, right? But we do have some really robust technology that helps us forecast our needs, and that is the challenge of our buyers. And it comes down to we want it just before we need it. We don't want it a week ahead of time, and we sure don't want it a day late, right? So quite a bit of time and quite a bit of our resources and energy go into forecasting our needs and then arranging product to come to our facility literally from all over the world. So to illustrate that, I thought I'd walk you through maybe a fun little example of the hardest item we handle, right? And when you leave here today, you're going to probably know more than you ever want to know about a banana, but it kind of does illustrate, the complexities of what it takes to bring product to you. So, in the interest of time, I'm not going to walk you through all of the steps of getting that banana to your store, but I would like to walk you through a couple of the key steps. So, can everybody see this map up on the board here? You can see that dot down in the lower right. That's where bananas are grown. 100% of bananas in the United States come from Central America. You can't get much further away from Central America than Spokane, Washington, right? It's about as far away in the United States as you can get from the banana supply. But that's where they come from. It's about 5,900 miles. That banana you bought yesterday at Rosar's came about 5,900 miles before you ever touched it. In all likelihood, that banana you go out and you buy today or tomorrow was harvested 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the way that works is just getting it to Spokane is a challenge, right? You don't air freight these first class. You got to put them on boats, very specialized boats, that float them all the way down to the Panama Canal, then come all the way around Mexico and land in Southern California, where we elect to pick them up in Southern California. So on the water alone, those bananas are 10 days. And then it takes us 4 or 5 days just to get that banana from Southern California up to Spokane, Washington. And then our banana ripener, and yes, that's his title, banana ripener, takes 5.5 days in this $1 million piece of equipment to take a silly thing like a banana and get it to the point where you're happy with it when you walk into the supermarket. So that's quite a journey. But it's not just about time and distance. There's a whole lot of hands that touch that banana before you ever got it. And I'll move through this quickly. I mean, you've got my buyer who calls down to the tropics and orders the bananas 3 weeks ahead of time, right? You've got the farmer who has to plant these bananas. And by the way, any idea how many crops you get out of a banana tree? One crop and you cut it down. It takes 11 months to grow 70 pounds of bananas and you cut that tree down. Isn't that amazing, right? And of commercially acceptable product, you might get 40 pounds off that tree. So you got the farmer who had to grow it, you've got the field worker who has to harvest that fruit, and this is not sitting on level ground out in Ritzville. This is in the tropics, very difficult area to grow things in, and these farm workers kill themselves harvesting these bananas and getting them to the boats. So you got the farmer, the field worker, then you got the guy that has to drive them, shouldn't call him guy, the truck driver that has to drive these from the middle of nowhere, Central America, all the way to the ports where these big boats pick up these bananas. Then you've got these specialized boats that have to float these things halfway around the world to Southern California. Then you got a dock worker that has to unload these really complex boats. Then you got a truck driver who's got to drive them all the way to Spokane. And then we got a banana ripener and a warehouse worker that has to process this fruit. And then we have to get it to the store so you can buy it. And through all of that, and this, and I know I'm a geek about this stuff, right? But you still pay 69 cents a pound for that banana. Pound for pound, that has to be the best value in food today, right? So I'm a big guy on little crazy factoids, right? So I looked at the average minimum wage in Spokane, at, right, $14.50 an hour, and I know this is before taxes, but at $14.50 an hour, that worker had to work 3 minutes to make enough money to buy a pound of bananas that came 5,900 miles away. Isn't that amazing? Or am I just geeking out up here? All right? I know my kids will tell me I'm geeking out. I talk way too much about this stuff. So anyway, I hope when you have your cornflakes tomorrow morning and you see those bananas floating in the bowl, you'll think a little bit about what I shared with you here today. Okay, how am I doing on time? I'm okay, right? All right. So let me switch gears on you here, and maybe as a final topic that I wanted to share with you is an initiative that we Perone, have taken on. We started it about 2 years ago. And let me set this up. There is a ton of consumer research that says the consumer wants to feel connected to that local farmer. They want to feel connected to where that product came from. And if you need evidence of that, I would suggest any weekend between now and the end of October, you drive up to Green Bluff and wait a half an hour to buy 3 pounds of apples, right? I mean, and I'm not making fun of it. I'm really trying to illustrate the point that there's almost a romance with the consumer that wants to know more about where their food is grown, particularly with local farmers, right? So understanding that, we took on the challenge of putting together a marketing campaign to try to highlight and bring more awareness to the growers in the Northwest, specifically the Pacific Northwest. We call the campaign Taste Local. That's the logo around it. And again, it's all about raising awareness and connecting consumers to so much of the product that they don't even know is grown in the stores that they're shopping today. So I'm going to be quick about this, but I do want to share with you just some of the marketing materials we put together.
I'm a 4th generation cherry grower. We've been growing cherries up here for over 100 years. Great-grandfather came for the gold rush. In 1909, we planted 15 acres of cherries. Every generation, we try to make it better. I like buying local myself. I just think it's fresher and it gives that unique experience. And that's why I think it's great if people can experience the local unique flavors for the region that they were grown. There's not another piece of ground like this in the whole world, where you got the Columbia River at 627 foot, up here to 3,200 foot where the highest cherries are growing. We put a lot of effort into it. We just aren't growing cherries. We're growing world famous, half-mile closer to the moon cherries. Here you've got snow sitting on the ground from the 1st of November to the 1st of April. Well, under that snow, the temperature stays at 38 to 42 degrees. And it's like a slow crock pot. The microorganisms are breaking down that compost, making this beautiful organic soup. And when the spring comes and the cherry trees just explode with blossoms because they've got all this rich soup sitting in there. The deeper the snow, the better the cherries. That's what my great-grandpa, he taught us. Every day is a new challenge. You don't know if it's going to deal you an inch of rain right in the middle of harvest. But if it does, you got to get the water off the cherries so they don't crack wide open. The challenge is to rise to the cards that Mother Nature gives you. It's not easy, but after 4 generations, you kind of get the hang of it. So, we developed lots of what we call point-of-sale material you'll see in the stores,
as well as video and social media content. And again, the whole concept here was, could we raise consumer awareness to understand better about the farms that are supporting them in the stores they're shopping, right? So some of the point of sale material we developed, I have an example right here, down here to my left, to your right. It's a series of posters we put in the stores. What you're seeing here is John Douglas. John, again, is a farmer right over in Pasco. He raises organic nectarines and peaches. So we developed these posters, and the concept here, and we think this is powerful, right? We could put the image of that farmer right in front of the nectarines that consumer is standing in front of. And if they're reasonably technically sound, there's a QR code. They can lift up their phone and they'll see a 20-second talk from John Douglas about the nectarines they're handling. And it's all about making that connection, right? One of the other things we did, and we have some out here if you're interested, this silly little disc. All it says is taste local. We produced hundreds of thousands of these, and we put them in the stores, and every item that's grown in the Northwest has this put on the sign so that consumer can quickly identify that that item was grown here in the Northwest. Likewise, I don't know if you've seen these in any of the Rosars, Yolks, or any of the stores I mentioned. We developed these chalkboards that when the consumer walks into the produce department, they can see today there's 155 items in that produce department that were grown right here in the Northwest. Again, it's about making those connections, right? And the research supports 100% of what we're doing there. Last thing, and we did lots of stuff, but I'll end it at this, is we developed what I'm calling these rolling billboards. We took 12 of our 53-foot tractor trailers, and we put the farmer's image on it, right? And we just tell a little story. What you're looking at there is Kyle Matheson from Stamilt Farms over in Wenatchee, big grower of apples and cherries, right? And it just helps make that connection. Now, I don't know that I can measure this, how effective this is, but there's a lot of anecdotal stuff. We get phone calls at the company every week from consumers that saw this with our tractor trailer pulling it, right? So we think it's resonating. We think it's helped driving that message. Let me close with this as it relates to this initiative. You know, we believe where Perrone is a locally owned, regionally relevant company, we think we're pretty well positioned to help drive that message home to consumers. And we really are honored to play a role in trying to elevate the farmer and make that connection with the consumer. So with that, I know I threw a lot at you, and I'm 2 minutes over. I'm sorry. Okay. I hope I did a respectable job giving you a sense of who we are, you know, what it is that we do, and some of the things that we're working on. And I'd be happy to open it up to any questions you might have about our company. Thank you.
Hi, Mike. First question, thank you. That's a wonderful presentation. It's great to hear, you know, how we're connected regionally, locally, and internationally. It's a twofold question here. The first one is, do you have a manager of your bananas? Do they get to call themselves the banana manager? And then, but the real question is, how many people locally in this region does Perrone employ?
Okay, well, let me answer the first question first. And I'll say saying it's kind of funny, but it really is, it's the most difficult job in our building. You know, all this equipment, but it's still a biological material, and it's going to do what it wants to do. So that guy we call the banana ripener, he's going to wake up every day knowing I'm going to tell him he's wrong. So it's a tough job, but I'm really proud of the team. Direct employees, we have about 145 direct employees. We are, our rank and file out in the warehouse is Teamsters. We have a great relationship with the rank and file. You know, a lot of business people in the room, right? You know what the trials and tribulations have been with keeping companies staffed in the last few years. We didn't have that problem. The majority of our people are well tenured. We really do treat people well. We don't ever ask them to do anything we wouldn't do, and we do recognize their accomplishments. And for that, we have great tenure with our people, and they make a great living, you know? Our truck drivers last year on average made $77,000. You know, yeah, that's not six figures, but that's $77,000 in your home, and you're driving the best equipment that money can buy, right? And, you know, we're putting into your pension. So it's a pretty good place to work. Does that answer your question? You betcha. Hi.
Hi, bananas.
Yes, ma'am.
So banana's kind of the victim of monoculture, right? With the Cavendish banana really getting a lot of disease that may make it extinct soon, I understand. What are you guys going to do about that 250,000 pounds?
Yeah.
Why did you have to sell so quickly if there's no Cavendish left?
Well, that's a great question. Let me first comment on the Cavendish. Every banana you buy today is of one variety. It's the Cavendish variety of banana that's produced in Central America. The demise of the banana has been greatly exaggerated. I will tell you that. But I would also tell you there's 3 companies that control this gargantuan industry, and they really have lots of research into the problem. They're not overly worried about it. I'm not minimalizing it, but I'm also trying to, I guess, articulate that it's not near as bad as it's been reported. Does that help? Good. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. This has been fascinating. Given the ownership of Perrone by URM, I'm curious of how that impacts ordering and passing through expenses. So specifically, is it the individual grocery stores that tell Perrone's how much they need, and that's how the ordering gets done in terms of quantifying it, or are you buying on spec and hoping to sort of push it forward? That's question number 1.
Yeah.
And then question number 2 is, how does that affect your ability to pass forward inflationary expenses like fuel and food costs and even labor cost increases?
Okay, 2 really great questions and really deep questions, both of them. So let me address your first question. I don't know if you can see me over there, but if I could summarize what I think you asked me, does the stores provide intelligence to us so we know how many bananas to order 3 weeks from now? My God, no. No. No, we're completely on our own. In fact, the stores don't even have to buy from us if they don't want to. So we have to get up every day and earn that business. But we do run the company on a platform, much like our building, that was engineered specifically to what we're doing. And we rely very heavily on history that helps guide us. So we combine historical movement of product with what we know is going on in the marketplace. We put those 2 together, add a little extra safety stock to it. And here's the amazing thing, and I could talk forever, so I'm sorry, but $140 million, our shrink meaning product we bought that we didn't sell, is less than 0.05%. Right? That's what these systems give us. And our service level, I was telling Julie about this, one of the key metrics we look at, for every 100 cases ordered, what percentage did we ship, right? Last year, that was over 96.5%. And this was during the pandemic, right? So our systems are pretty solid. Are we perfect? No. But you know what? Sometimes when that store ordered what we call a 64 count apple, Fuji, and all we have is a 72, we give them the opportunity to move to a different size product or a like product, and it helps us keep the supply chain full. So that was question 1. I'll come back to your question 2.
And then passing expenses forward?
Okay, so I'm in the commodities business. We quote prices a week out, and we hold those prices to the extent that we can. But at the end of the day, if our costs go up, we pass that on to our customers. So one of the other things we measure a lot is average case value. That's a good indicator of inflation. What did an average case cost us today versus a year ago? And for all of the last 12 months, it's up almost 10%. We can't absorb that, so that gets built into the cost of goods and everything we sell.
Thanks for a great presentation. I've got one question, well, 2 parts. What percentage of your products are organic? And is it increasing, staying the same, or increasing?
Okay. We measure what's called the indexing in organics against national companies. Perrone, we sell a little bit over 10% of what we sell out of that building is truly organic product. And that over-indexes to the norm in our industry by about 1.5%. So that tells me we're vibrant and the consumers here really do have an interest in organic produce. It's almost a full offering. So of those 1,200 items, probably 400 of them are organic. It's much harder to procure, though. And it's much harder to handle in a warehousing environment if you want to keep your certification around being an organic warehouse. So it is kind of problematic, but it is an important part of our business. Now, let me come back to your question about growth. I'm going to omit the last 2 years from that question because there were days that's all we had was organic, right? And so that's what sold. So if we look at the curve of that business before the pandemic hit, it was growing, but it wasn't dynamically growing. We'd see a 0.5 point to 1 point a year growth. During the pandemic, and I'm really proud of the fact that our service level didn't dip very low We did do some creative things, but we managed to ship, very, very well during that period. A lot of consumers were faced with, they had to either buy the organic carrot or they weren't going to get a carrot. What we're seeing is some of that sticking, right? Some of that sticking with the consumer today. It's going to be interesting to see how the next year plays out as this whole thing calms down. Yes, sir.
This is actually more of a testimonial than a question, but I want to thank you for all of the work and, more importantly, all of the food that you've provided for, KSPS Fit Kids Day over the last several years.
Thank you.
The apples and the bananas that you've managed to supply to us and to all of the kids and the parents out there, it really means a lot. And I'd like to just thank you publicly for doing that and being a real community partner. So
Thank you. We're happy and proud to be a part of the community. Thank you. Yes, sir?
My question is about what's water in Southern California going to do?
That's the $64,000 question. What is the water shortage in California going to do to us? Quick answer is I don't know for sure. But I will tell you, this past summer was tremendously problematic for crops that we would normally go to California for that just wasn't grown. And the example I would use is fresh corn. Fresh corn takes an enormous amount of water, an enormous amount of water. And the majority of growers in California opted not to grow corn because of the amount of water it was going to take to do it. So I'm going to come back to my capitalism comment. There's an opportunity there, right? So we had growers on the East Coast seeing this and, raising crops that were not normally meant for the West Coast. So what I'm saying here is a couple things. First and foremost, the water deal is serious, it's real, and it's problematic for our industry, but we're also seeing that vacuum being filled elsewhere, right? And what that's going to mean to a consumer in Spokane, Washington, is the days of 3 for $1 corn are probably done for a long time until we solve the water. Now, I'm going to give you a ray of hope, too. I'm old enough to remember when water was an issue 18 years ago in California, and we pulled out of that ditch. I'm hopeful that may happen again. I have no idea. But I do know this is a capitalistic business model, and somebody will fill that void. The only question is how much is it going to cost us. Does that help? Good.